I think that he, because of living on his own for so many years as a young man, he developed an individual identity, an inner resource that I think was not something that he was brought up with. So I think in terms of raising us and being a father, I think he was more cognizant and appreciative of our individuality, perhaps, and the ways that we were becoming our own people in the world as we were growing up. I remember when my son was 17, he went to Argentina for a year on a high school exchange program. You know, and I felt the world had been pulled out from under me because he was still a year younger than his classmates that, you know, it was a year before his classmates were going away to college. And my dad was really supportive of it. He said that experience for him was really how he developed how he learned what his resources were as an individual and how he could rely on himself to take care of situations that came up. So he was really supportive of it for Ariel, for our son, that this was going to be a positive experience to him. I remember him saying, you know, when you really have to live on your own, your resources become the surviving factor. So he was supportive of that instead of kind of being like, oh my God, your kid's leaving. How can you cope? You know, because it's certainly not in the broader community of his family for a young man to go away like that. For a family member to leave is a big deal. So I think he recognized that it was a big deal, but also was supportive of it, that it was a way that he was going to build up his strength. I think he was like that with us as a parent too. There are some of the minute things, to use your word, you know, the things like my dad living in a home where the farmer would take the cow down the road. That one is just always one that comes into my mind when I think about how different life was. That the farmer would take his cow down the road on the way to the market and let people come out of their houses and stop him and come out with a bottle and fill the bottle with milk and take it inside to their family. I mean, it was little things like that that made me realize, wow, even though this wasn't a man when I was growing up who talked about, you know, oh, life was so different back then. I mean, he just kind of put it behind him and moved on. It was little things like that that made me realize how different his life really was, and to give me try to get a feeling of what day-to-day life, year after year life was like in such a different world. The more global thing that glues into my mind about from doing this research and this writing is how long the time span was that the Jews in Syria were so integrated into that world, and how quickly that has ended. How long before the Spanish Inquisition, I mean, there's biblical stories about Abraham in Aleppo, and the time period in which the great synagogue was being built was long before, was hundreds of years before the Jews arrived from Spain. And you know, and then, as you mentioned, the Aleppo Codex, that this was a center of Jewish scholarship for so long that it was considered the destination for this manuscript that needed a place of safekeeping. Aleppo was chosen for that. So for this long a period of time, I mean, it's amazing to me to think about. There are not that many places in the world. There are others, but you know, it's an unusual thing to have a community that has a tie to a place for 1,500, 2,000 years. I mean, it is an amazing thing in itself, and that they were integrated and valued and part of that world, and not in ghettos, and not, you know, surviving on the streets or having to be a real subculture. And then in such a short period of time to have that end, I can't really do the math and get my head around that. It's an astonishing thing, and that really probably, in addition, I mean, along with really wanting to honor my father in writing this book and his personal experiences and our family's experience, that was something I really wanted to honor in this book, because there are no Jews there now. It's a blessing now, given what's going on in this, you know, in this war that's going on there now. I do consider it incredibly fortunate that we don't have family members and community there now. But it's an incredible loss as a historical thing that the Jewish community that could have existed there with these other cultures so well for so long can't be there now. To the old country, none, as far as I know. To the place, one of my uncles went back there to visit, and I think that was an enjoyable trip for him, but as a visit, not as a place where he saw himself fantasizing living again. So to the old country itself, not loyalty. To the Syrian Jewish culture, incredible, unwavering allegiance, an incredibly unusually resistant allegiance. I describe the sense that my dad kind of just opened the vault and told me about his experiences that I had never known anything about. And as I think about that and how much more complicated all those stories were than I realized, and then talk with other people about their family history, I realize family history is always full of surprises. And I think we can assume they're always going to be pretty amazing surprises. Not always beautiful. I mean, they might be, ugly experiences that families went through and so on, or things that they did. But the appreciation that I've gotten of how complicated families are and how complicated family history is, I think, has come out of doing this writing. I just lost a thought. I think. I was going to say, we see survivors. And we hear the stories about the people that are here and that made it. And we know the struggle to survive that they went through. But I think from writing this and thinking about my family and hearing people talk about other families, their families, I realize, that day-to-day process is a magnificent one of how families go on and cultures go on through generations. So that's where, my focusing on my family kind of expanded into just a sense of awareness of other families and other cultures that I may not get anywhere as closely into as I did my own family, but that just makes me realize there's a million stories out there that I'm going to bump into and go, oh my God, it is amazing what, your family, what your culture went through and how you're here.